So as you've no doubt heard, on the global version of One Piece Treasure Cruise, all the movie content will be disappearing from the game within about 10 days. So to commemorate the event, I'll be counting down the top 10 movie units from the Fortnight. Now you might be wondering why I might be excluding out the movie raids, and that's simply because they're obviously the best characters to get. Just go and watch top 10 raids and see what order the movie characters are in, and that would be the 3, 2, 1 on this list. So to make the list a little bit more interesting, we're just going to be counting down the Fortnite characters, giving a little love to the characters you probably wouldn't see otherwise. Now, although everyone is mourning the loss of these Fortnights and raid bosses, it's mostly the raid bosses people are going to miss. The Fortnights aren't all that necessary. Though some have some legend skill books and some other useful skill books, they are in other Fortnights, and the majority of the movie characters aren't really that great overall. That said, not everyone has the top tier characters, sometimes you gotta make do, and these guys are perfectly fine for a lot of teams. Especially when starting out, when you don't have a lot of crew cost, or you don't have the right units right away. These guys can be very useful to new players as well as experienced players in some niche situations. So with all that said, let's get started. At number 10 we have Scarlett, because at top 10 has 10 spots and someone has to go here. You can make an argument for the Nami and Robins that are disappearing, since they can be used to socket other Straw Hats. But this is a monkey dressed in human clothes, so this gets plus 10 points for that. Overall, Scarlett isn't really a great character, though he has decent HP and okay attack. His RCV is kind of bad, and his captain ability and special are really not that good. However, when starting out, he's not a terrible int unit to use for your int teams if you need someone. And if you're starting out and you need an int unit for a ramping team such as Rayleigh or Log Luffy, his special will allow him to do a decent amount of damage, although since it only boosts himself, it isn't all that useful later on in the game. Another drawback is that he's a free spirit powerhouse rather than being one of the class 1 typings, which is a little bit harder to build teams for early on in the game, and by the time you can build free spirit and powerhouse teams, you probably have other people that you want to use. Overall, not a great character, but you can find some uses for him. At number 9 we have Cow Chopper, who's here because he's a cow chopper. Look how adorable he is. His stats are atrocious, his HP and attack barely clock over 1000 combined, though his RCV is not too bad. However, he does boost int characters by ×2, which is probably the best free int boosting captain on global at the moment, sharing it the same amount as Buggy, and Buggy does have better stats and a better special. But if you can't be asked to farm Buggy from story, or his Fortnite hasn't appeared for you yet, try Cow Chopper for a while. There's also Dr. Hogback and Striker Crop from story mode, who are both ×2 int captains, but if you can get those guys, Cow Chopper probably isn't going to be a thing on your radar anyway. Another feather in Cow Chopper's tiny hat is that his special boosts all attack by 1.2. Now that's not much, but it's at least something, and if early on you don't have another attack booster, you can use this guy. It's a rainbow boost, so have at it on your gear 2 teams. Really no longevity on this guy, but you can use him to socket your other choppers such as Monster Chopper, but you may want to keep him around just as a trophy unit because he's so adorable. Next up we have Dr. Indigo, who is a Dex Cerebral Shooter. His stats are pretty good, 1700 HP, 900 attack and 350 RCV. So he can be a decent sub on Dex and shooter teams, and since he's a ×2 Cerebral captain, you can start building your own Cerebral teams too. His special is also not half bad, reducing that HP you currently have by 80%, dealing that damage to the enemy and then reducing damage by 80%. Obviously you don't really want to use him as a primary damage reducer since you lose most of your HP doing this, but if you have a healer it can be viable, but you probably want to use Alvida or Perona instead. He shares the title of being the best Cerebral free-to-play captain with Gloriosa and Breed, but both those units are probably better with either better stats or a little bit extra on their captain abilities. Overall he's a very average character, but sometimes average is good enough and may help you on certain Fortnights that require monos, typings or classes. Up next we have General Hot Dog, who doesn't even have a captain ability. His stats are pretty bad at 1000 HP, a little less than 900 attack and 181 RCV. But what makes him useful and may even allow experienced players to use him is that his special boost attack against delayed units by 1.2. Now what's special about this is that specials that boost attack conditionally will also stack with attack boost for type or classings. For example, if you have a ×2 strength booster, this attack boost will also go on top of that. The two current types of conditional attack boosting is either onto delayed enemies or enemies with reduced defense. In my opinion, delaying enemies is something a lot easier to do than reducing the enemy's defense, plus delaying is just better in general. So that's a point to him. Plus he is only one of 2 units currently that are free to play that allow you to boost against delayed units, the other being Dalmatian. However, Dalmatian is a much better unit overall. But if you're early on in the game and you can't beat the Marine Raider at the moment, this guy will be a suitable replacement, as well as being more useful still on fighter driven and dex teams. So although he has terrible stats and is a very, very ugly man, he's pretty useful overall. At number 6 we have Count Butler. He is an int-driven powerhouse with pretty good stats, having 2100 HP, 1100 attack and 220 RCV. His special boosts his own attack by 1.3 for 3 turns, reduces the damage received by 20% for 3 turns, and deals some amount of his attack back to the enemy. This is a very strange jack of all trades special, which really isn't all that useful in the later game, but maybe early on you just want to take a little less damage, do a little bit more damage, but the percentages on these things aren't really big enough to have a visible impact on any raid you would really fight. So probably just would be used to make Fortnight a little bit easier. His captain ability has the potential to boost units by 2.625, which sounds pretty good until you realize there are only 3 units that are driven powerhouses, including Count Butler. And one of them is Eiichiro, a legend with a much better captain ability. So his captain ability will never really reach its full potential, and even if he could, it really wouldn't be worth it. So Count Butler's real strength would be as a sub for int-driven or powerhouse teams. He has decent stats that really won't be outclassed by many rare recruits or other units. But his special leaves something to be desired, so he really isn't a top tier character or anything. That said, maybe in the future there'll be a crap ton of driven powerhouse characters, and his captain ability will be super powerful. But for now it's borderline useless, but Butler himself can still be a very reliable sub. Up next we have Shreya? Yeah, that. He is a dex driven fighter and he's purely at this spot because of his pretty powerful captain ability. As you've seen, most captain abilities that these movie Fortnite characters have had is at most been ×2, but Shreya boosts driven characters by 2.25 times. This is right up there next to Shiki and Colosseum Kid as being the best driven captains you can get for free. However, those units are much better, but they're also much more difficult to obtain. There really isn't that much to say about Shreya other than his captain ability, which is very powerful. His stats are mediocre and his special is pretty subpar. He had the potential to be a very powerful unit overall, but his stats and special drag him down. But his captain ability is so powerful that it puts him right up here on this list. You probably really don't want to use this guy as a sub, only as a captain, until you're either able to obtain maybe Caesar Clown or powerful enough to get Colosseum Kid. Next up we have Tanaka, who is a quick free spirit shooter with 1700 HP, 1089 attack and 300 RCV. He boosts quick characters by ×2, which is pretty good for a free to play character, but this is actually a pretty common captain ability, with Rob Lucci, Hina, Halloween Zoro and New Year's Sanji all having the same captain ability. Obviously very useful early on in the game, but once you are able to get a nail, they're all outclassed and you probably won't really use them as captains anymore. What puts him high up on this list, along with his pretty reasonable stats, is his special, which is very versatile, reducing the duration of bind by 3 turns, as well as removing badly matching block and bomb orbs into empty orbs, with a max cooldown of only 9. Removing bind is obviously very useful, especially early on in the game when you don't have sockets that are able to do it for you, and being on such a short cooldown makes it very useful as well for raids and even Colosseum. Removing badly matching block and bomb orbs is also very powerful, considering that those will half the damage you'll do, so this guy is essentially doubling the damage to be able to do that turn if you had 4 badly matching or block orbs. Tanaka really is just a solid unit overall. Maybe he won't be all too useful to really experienced players, but for newer players and maybe even players later on in the game, he does have his uses and will be a very reliable nakama for you to lean on. Up next we have Dice, who is a strength free spirit powerhouse who has a monstrous 3000 HP, 1000 attack and a pretty sad minus 500 RCV. Obviously his massive HP and attack are offset by his negative RCV, but this really isn't that much of a big deal when you're going to be using him. His captain ability has the potential to boost strength units by 2.5 times when he is at 1 HP. Obviously not a top tier captain since you have to be at 1% HP to reach his full potential for only 2.5 multiplier, but 2.5 is 2.5 and that is actually pretty rare for free to play characters. That said, I would just prefer that he was a ×2 strength captain instead. His special allows him to boost strength units potentially by 1.75 times if he's below 30% HP. Again, a 1.75 times boost is very powerful, but with the prerequisite of being below 30% HP means he won't be very useful for every team, but if you manage to make it all work, it's actually very powerful overall. Say for example a mono strength Whitebeard team, this guy would fit right in if you don't have a strong-willed Luffy. This guy does have the potential to allow you to burst a ton of damage on one turn if you're able to safely get down below 30% HP, but overall he's too situational to be used by most players in the end game. But he is a pretty solid sub if you don't mind the minus 500 RCV. At number 2 we have Gaspar. He's a strength powerhouse striker with very legit stats at 2500 HP, 1000 attack and 198 RCV. His captain ability would be very good for free to play and newer players, boosting the attack of characters which cost below 20 by 2, with a little added bonus of boosting the HP of powerhouse characters by 1.2 as well. This is very useful as it's a rainbow captain ability, meaning you can really just throw on all your powerful specials on that you might have, GPUs, Alvidas, and they'll still be able to do a decent amount of damage as well. Since Gear 2 would have probably been your best rainbow captain beforehand, who boosts them easily 1.5 times. Obviously you probably won't really have a lot of other Gaspard friend captains, but you'll be able to pair them up with say Sengoku's, Kairos's, and you'll be able to do a decent amount of damage with your rainbow team. His special is also pretty good, dealing 25 times his attack to one enemy, as well as boosting powerhouse characters by 1.5 for one turn. This is currently the best powerhouse type booster you can currently get for free on global, so it can be pretty legit for your powerhouse teams. However, the drawback is that it has a very long 18 turn cooldown at max, but if you're using a 3-day 2-year Sanji team, you'll have no problem stalling for it. I'd say Gaspar is a very strong unit overall. He has pretty powerful stats, his captain ability is very good for new players to make rainbow teams, and his special is actually pretty good for powerhouse teams. Obviously still not a top tier character in big scheme of things, but I'd say he's a B+ player. And at number 1 we of course have Baccarat. Now Gaspar probably is a better unit overall in terms of combat effectiveness, but Baccarat's captain ability really is too powerful and too useful for every person in the game to not be topping this list. It boosts all characters by a whopping 1.2 times. Truly a powerful captain ability. Up there with Log Luffy and Akinu, just amazing. And I guess getting an extra drop isn't too bad either. Being able to get a total of 2 extra drops if you're using double Baccarat means that you could potentially get 40% more turtles every turtle time run, 20% more cola and candy on the crap missions, and even extra Fortnight and raid drops if you're able to clear those. Just a really nice captain ability to have for those islands that drop really valuable materials and are very easy to clear. And no matter where you are in the game, you'll definitely get a lot of value out of this captain ability. There really is no reason to mention her stats. She could have minus 500 attack and she'd still top this list. That's how powerful her captain ability is. Luckily there's no need to gem to farm her or anything, just get one copy and you'll be good. This is definitely the unit people are most sad to see go, so hopefully we see a replacement for her so newer players will be able to enjoy her captain ability as well. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'm sure you're all very busy farming out all the movie characters you need. such as Tessera and Zephyr. I myself will be streaming farming Zephyr on Wednesday, where hopefully I'll be able to max out his special. So tune in at Twitch TV/EnsoBN. Hopefully I'll see you then on Wednesday. That's all for now, and I'll see you next time, my Nakama!